Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. It's our college football preview of the week. We got the number 8 Michigan State Spartans taking on the number 6 Michigan Wolverines. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. And we'll surely appreciate it here on 100 Yards Football. I'm Vincent Turner. And the person that's going to break down the Michigan State Spartans and the Michigan Wolverines, he's the most talented member of 100 Yards Football. But however, he's one of the most talented members on 100 Yards Football. And he knows all about college football. And he's been doing an outstanding job with Jeremiah Long during the season on our college football previews on Monday morning. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to have him here today with me. Mr. Logan Landers, how you doing, sir?
Hey, first off, I appreciate the very kind introduction, Mr. Turner. I'm doing tremendous. We've been grinding early this morning, doing a lot of game previews, a lot of football content, but I'm excited to talk about this one. The battle for Paul Bunyan, Michigan State and Michigan. It's a classic matchup. You can't talk about college football history without bringing up these two teams. I can't wait to dive into it.
Okay, man, the big game on Saturday in East Lansing. If you like the video today, please come and share it. I'm looking at this game. The loser of this game is going to be eliminated from the college football playoffs. So, Mr. Landers, tell us about both teams and who's going to win the game on Saturday.
It's going to be a tremendous matchup, I believe. So you have the Michigan State Spartans who've had a tremendous season. They started off the year unranked, and like you said, now they are in the top 10 in terms of the best college football teams in the nation. Of course, Michigan, they've always had that stigma around them since Coach Harbaugh came to the program that they should be in this position battling for and trying to get into a national championship, into the college football playoffs. And this is the peak time to do so for both teams. I think Coach Mel Tucker and the Michigan State Spartans have drastically exceeded expectations after an underwhelming 2020 COVID-shortened season. However, for Michigan, hey, they've always had a hot start. They've always had a good season under Coach Harbaugh. But it's looking like something special is in the water this year. They've looked a little bit extra dominant. They've looked really crisp, really well. And I think, I have been an outspoken critic of Coach Harbaugh before about not getting it done in the big games. Well, now's his time to prove me wrong. This is the biggest game of the season for him right now. I think that if he can go in there and beat Michigan State, because Michigan State, let's not forget, they won this game last year. They won in a very close matchup. If Michigan can come in and get this win, that's going to even get their chances to get into the college football playoff. It's going to go up even higher. And with both these teams undefeated on the season, it's going to be a tremendous matchup. But let's break it down a little bit. Michigan State, what have they been doing? Who's been their key players? Of course, you got to talk about the quarterback, Peyton Thorne. Almost 2,000 yards on the year so far. 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But the one key that I think could be a factor in this game is the O-line for Michigan State. He's been sacked 10 times so far on the year. That could be a factor. Of course, the great running back, Kenneth Walker, going to get over 1,000 yards in this game. He's got 9 touchdowns on the season. Look for him to have another explosive day. He's one of the best college football running backs in the nation at now. He's just getting hotter and hotter each week. I love watching him perform on the field. The receiving core, Jaden Reed, Jalen Naylor. What more can you say about those two gentlemen? 5 touchdowns each. They've both got over 500 yards at the receiving core. That's Peyton Thorne's best 2 options, and rightfully so. They've got explosiveness. They can catch the ball. Reed has 27 catches. Naylor has 27 catches. So both of those two gentlemen are absolutely phenomenal ball hawks, can get the ball whenever you want it to, and most importantly, can get in the end zone and put up some points on the board. The receiving core for Michigan State's great. I like Peyton Thorne. He's really improved. He's shown something to me this season. He's looked great. I think the one key that could play a factor, especially in these big games, these big bowl games, these big rivalry games, Mr. Turner, is the kicking game. And the one stat that I was looking at when I was doing my research for Michigan State was the kicker, Matt Coughlin. He's 10 of 15 for field goals this year. I mean, that's not too bad, but when you come to big games, you have to be on point and precise if you want to pull out a big win in this one. So watch out for that, because we've seen in some of the big games that the kicking can be a little bit off. And especially with this year, just kicking in general for the NFL and in college, It just seems like some voodoo or some curse has been put on some kickers, and they just have not been able to hit some extra points and some field goals this year. So watch out for that. But let's go over to Coach Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines, and they have looked absolutely phenomenal this season. One of the best teams in college football, like you mentioned, and one of the best just absolute teams. They've done some great work this year, of course, led by their coach, Jim Harbaugh, and their quarterback, Cade McNamara, who's looked good this season. Over 1,000 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 1 INT. And just to compare to Peyton Thorne, he's only been sacked twice so far this season. That Michigan O-line is no joke, and I think they're going to keep their quarterback well protected once again this upcoming Saturday in this highly competitive matchup. Of course, the rushing game's looking good. Blake Corum, the two-headed dragon, I call him, Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins, 729 yards for Corum. Haskins with 600 on the year. 10 touchdowns apiece for both of those gentlemen. So you got to think that the Michigan running game is going to be dominant once again this upcoming week. Both those gentlemen have looked absolutely phenomenal, and I expect them to have another big game this upcoming week. I expect the receiving core of Cornelius Johnson, who's led the team with catches and with touchdowns. He's looked good so far this season, 18.4 yard average per catch. Whenever someone wants to throw deep, he's their man. Of course, led with Dalen Baldwin as well, 18.3 average, 219 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the year. I know Michigan's not a throwing team per se. They are more of a run and gun type of deal. But whenever you need to get a throw down and McNamara can get it to them and toss it deep, I think it's looking good for them. I like the Michigan Wolverines. I like their team. But let's talk about the defense for both these squads here. I talked about the offense. Let's go over the defense and who's going to be putting in good work. So let's go back to Michigan State and see who all some of their best players have been. And you can't talk about Michigan State's defense and not bring up the electric safety, Xavier Henderson. My goodness, what hasn't this man done so far this year? 60 combined tackles on the season, 2 sacks as well, 1 INT, an absolute menace on the defensive side of the ball. And, of course, his partner, Angelo Gross, 53 tackles on the year, 1 interception. And I remember last week we were with Mr. Bobby Butler. He said the good key to a defender isn't interceptions per se, but it's passes defended. Mr. Gross has 6 passes defended so far this season for the Michigan State Spartans. He's looked tremendous, and that could come into play if McNamara and if Coach Harbaugh tend to throw the ball a little bit more this game, because you got to think that Sparty is ready for that running of Michigan. So it's going to be interesting to see how that lines up. Also, a big shout-out to Quavarius Crouch, the linebacker. He's looked great so far this season. And the big key who I think needs to have a great game and get to that quarterback, get through that dominant O-line for Michigan State is Jacob Panusk. Man, 5.5 sacks on the year. That is their breadwinner right there. He's got to find a way to get around the big boys at Michigan and get to the QB. So if you're Michigan, you really got to prepare for that. If you're Michigan State, you got to prepare for that running game, that two-headed monster like I mentioned. And for the passing game, don't sleep on it, because like I mentioned, even though they're not throwing the ball every single down like a lot of college football teams are nowadays, they do have the ability to chuck it deep, and they will, especially in this big game here. Let's go over to Michigan and see what their defense is looking like. They're looking good. Josh Ross, the linebacker, leading the team with 44 tackles on the year. He's looked great at the linebacking position, and he's looked dominant. And then I think the one key, like I mentioned, who's going to get to the quarterback more? Well, Michigan's got it, man. They've got 2 guys who are leading the teams in terms of sacks on the year. That's Aiden Hutchinson, the defensive end, who's looked dominant, and David Ojabo. Man, 5 sacks for each of those gentlemen. They've looked absolutely dominant at times, and I think that they will get to the quarterback many times during this game. And I think that each of those gentlemen will have a sack, at least one, during this ball game. They're too dominant. I think that the Michigan State O-line might not be able to contain both of those gentlemen, and I think that they're going to have a field day against Michigan State. It's going to be a great matchup. I think both of these teams, they're well coached. We see Mel Tucker breaking out as one of the better head coaches. Like I said, after a rough year last year, he's bounced back. He's made this team into a good force, into a team that proves that, they are in contention, like you mentioned, for that college football playoff. They need some things to happen to get into that top spot, and mainly beating the Michigan Wolverines, their big rival, which has been going on since the 1800s. That's how long this football game's been played for. And if you're Michigan, you know, it's like the Atlanta Braves. I got the shirt on this morning. Got to represent the team right now in the World Series. But it's like what they said. You got to kill the narrative. And the thing with Michigan is they've looked great ever since Coach Harbaugh has been there. But the big narrative around them is that they've not been able to live up to the hype and get through the big games. Well, this is your chance to prove it, Michigan. It's going to be a great matchup. And Mr. Turner, like you said, you usually bring on some great hits, some great songs, and I'm going to do the same for you this morning. It's a great song. I'm taking it back in time now, all the way back to 1976, one of the best punk rock bands of all time. Some might even say the original punk rock band, the Ramones, and their hit song, Blitzkrieg Bop. And, man, this is how it's going to be. They're forming in a straight line. They're going through a tight line. The kids, they're losing their minds. The Blitzkrieg Bop. It's going to be a great matchup between these two teams. Explosive offenses, great defense. But I think overall, in the end, the final score and my prediction for this one, the Michigan Wolverines will win this one in a tight matchup. I've got Michigan 34, and I've got Michigan State 28. It's going to be a close matchup. I can't wait to see it be played. In Michigan, you're taking home the best trophy, the best-looking trophy in all of college football with Paul Bunyan, baby. Can't be beat. I can't wait to watch this matchup. And another chapter will be written in this historic rivalry.
And that being said, it's Mel Tucker against Jim Harbaugh. It's a great time in the state of Michigan, baby. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. You heard the breakdown from my man, the youngest member, and he's very talented, of 100 yards of football, Mr. Logan Landers. If you like the video, please come in and share it. Big Ten football. The number 8 Michigan State Spartans taking on the number 6 Michigan Wolverines. Have a blessed week, and we'll surely appreciate it here on 100 Yards of Football.